print an organ in microgravity. So part of the reason commercial space stations are a thing is we're really at capacity on the International Space Station, both in terms of space for lab experiments, but also astronaut time and things like that. So think of lots of laboratories, special purpose for a lot of these biopharma applications that would not only do the science to make sure we perfect the power of microgravity, but then ultimately scale that up to do in-space manufacturing on a lot of these promised technologies. And imagine a future, I don't know what the median age in the room is, but I'll assume it's 40 years old. Imagine a future in 25 years where you need a new organ and your stem cells could be transmitted to an orbital space station and you could get a perfect organ printed that's going to match your biology, that won't be rejected because it's going to match your DNA. And that can be printed in microgravity. And of course, once it's completed, then you can put it in gravity because it won't collapse. And then it could be inserted in your body. So I know this sounds crazy, it sounds like science fiction, but we have the technology to do this. It's a matter of perfecting it and then ultimately scaling it up. So if you look at biopharma, whether it's Merck or Pfizer, and of course Switzerland's one of the key biopharma capitals of the world, there are billions and billions and billions of dollars of capital focused on drug development. Keytruda, which is a breakthrough lung cancer drug, was primarily developed on the International Space Station. So I see huge promise in biopharma. And it's not only, again, I want to come back to the theme. We go to space to benefit life here on Earth. Yes, there's a business case. Yes, people will make money. But fundamentally, it'll make humans' quality of life better and minimize suffering. And that's really the key thing. I go back to John's point on internet access. Why? Is it to surf TikTok? No, it's to unlock this human potential for people who don't have broadband access. And ultimately, that benefits the world. And I really want to emphasize that. We go to space to benefit Earth.
Thank you so much for sharing, even though for some of us it may seem a little bit out there. But it is a really specific example for people to really start to understand, like, these are really different and unique opportunities, and we need all of you to help us get there. So that's amazing. Maybe, John, I'll come to you. What do you see as sort of the next breakthrough that we can do we got a little bit of the biopharma, but let's use a 5-year time frame. What's the next transformation that you see?
John, you might have dropped your mic.
No. Certainly the single biggest change agent, the single biggest thing that has had an impact for just across the space industry is the reduction in launch prices that we've seen over time. And that has come about primarily due to reusability. You could just go back not that long ago and people thought this was like a far off, completely unthinkable thing. And then, of course, first SpaceX proved it out with the Falcon 9 rocket, and they now do that almost every single day. And now other companies are starting to do it for the first time. So, now we're looking at them scaling up with Starship, and Starship as just the reusability that they are achieving there it's actually a new kind of reusability. And there's other companies that are doing this as well. A friend of mine runs a company called Stoke Space, which is also doing full reusability. Full reusability means they are reusing both stages of the rocket. And that is actually another unlock for even, instead of just reusing the first stage, throwing away the upper stage, now this is an even further unlock for launch prices coming down. And then, of course, there's the sheer scale of the activity that's happening, whether it be the scaling up of size of Starship or, the increased launch cadence of other rockets around the world is just having already a dramatic impact.
Oh, amazing. Okay, maybe we'll do one for all of you. We've talked a lot already about some of the benefits that are out there, and we touched a little bit on this, but Renato, I'll start with you. How do you think we need to evolve these private and public partnerships to make sure we achieve these benefits globally? We've talked a bit about that, but maybe you could expand, and then we'll go through everybody.
I mean, from our side, this is a very important question because, I mean, let's say on a national scale, we're trying to position the ecosystem, but also support through our ESA participation, the European scale. So for us, the question is really, we see this future coming. You mentioned the organs in orbit, the pharma opportunities we will have. And for us, there is still a gap in between. And I think there is a lot of research which needs to be done. There is also the right facilities which need to be available. And this gap we will need to bridge over the next years. And also the question of availability. We need to be able to launch as quickly as possible to get to the speed necessary to evolve the technologies and to evolve also the products. We have to move from an economy at the moment which is very strongly supported by government to an economy which then, a space economy which is then supported by the private sector, where the private sector will be the final customer. And I think this is the step we're trying to do.
Great. Anything to add?
No, because I've spoken too much before. So. Okay.
Dylan, anything you want to add here?
No, I think it's been covered.
Okay. Great. Okay. Well, then I'm going to pivot to Samantha. We have an astronaut. I was going to say that not a lot of people have actually spent a year on Earth that are actually still alive. Until I found out you actually went up. I was going to say on the stage at all, but a year out there. I mean, how do you see the future of human spaceflight? And maybe just a little bit of your own story here would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm, a little bit of the classic astronaut story. So I grew up in a tiny little village in the mountains in Italy, so maybe not so obvious that you end up becoming an astronaut. But I do think that it set me on the right path because, you know, you grew up in a place very much like Davos, maybe not so glamorous, but very similar in the landscape and size and remoteness. But it set me on the right path because I had a very direct connection to the night sky, very little light pollution, and it was a very strong presence. And then, you know, that I think triggered my fascination, but then, of course, I had all the opportunities that, school and books and TV shows and all of that offers you, even if you grew up in a remote location, to connect to that amazing human adventure, which is spaceflight. And, you know, I grew up in the 80s, and space shuttle was flying, and there were men and women going back and forth all the time, and somehow I was crazy enough to assume that, you know, I'll do that as well one day. And somehow it didn't happen. The first time I went to space station was in 2014-15 on a Russian Soyuz vehicle. So it seems a completely different age. It was... all of these changes we've talked about were obviously in the making, but I certainly wasn't particularly aware of them, right? I was focused on my mission training. It was a very long training flow, and I was learning Soyuz, which is a vehicle, very much a legacy vehicle from the 70s, 80s, modernized over time, but very much that legacy vehicle, and that was spaceflight for me. And then I served a year on the International Space Station. And again, it was before we started seeing all this trend towards commercialization. And then boom, I mean, I think all those changes that had been in the making kind of like all came together and started materializing. So when I flew in 2022, the landscape, the context had changed significantly, I would say. I mean, the space station is still the space station, but boy, there was so much more going on. And you could tell just by the, you know, on my first flight, if I wanted to find a corner on the space station to, I don't know, set up my own private little experiment or something, right? That wouldn't bother anyone, and it was fine. I mean, you could find little corners like that on the floor, on the wall, wherever, it doesn't matter. But in 2022, it was hard because every little, you know, square centimeter, square foot, I mean, not square, cubic centimeter, cubic foot was taken. The sheer amount of activities, research facilities had incredibly increased. So when you say we're out of capacity, I can definitely testify to that. The other thing that had changed is that we had started to see a lot more of those commercial, we call them payloads, because this in the end are the ones that, you know, in theory pay the bills, right? Because they are the actual useful stuff that you get out of space station as outcomes of experiments. So with this fancy word payloads, we started to see a lot more of those commercial payloads. How did we even know as astronauts that they were commercial? Well, because maybe there were more restrictions on taking pictures, on sharing data, which is normal, right? I mean, if you have a commercial customer who flies their experiments, they certainly want to own the outcome and the data because they're paying for that, and they want a return on their investment with the proprietary technology at the end or a proprietary product. So we certainly saw a lot of that going on, which I think is showing this trend. And then, of course, I flew to station not on a Soyuz rocket and vehicle, but on a Falcon 9 and a Dragon spacecraft, which is much more, it's a spacecraft of the 21st century, so much more comfortable for sure as an experience, and also much more automated. And then the other thing that I will mention is that, again, from personal anecdote, when I flew with my crew from Houston to Cape Canaveral to Florida to launch, we were supposed to be launching after 4 days. That's the usual timeline. 4 days before launch, you fly from Houston to Florida, and you get those final activities, and then you launch. And it can happen, of course, that you get delayed for a number of reasons. Usually it's weather. Usually it's launch weather. You don't have good weather to launch, either on the launch site or somewhere in the ascent corridor. The weather is so bad that if you had to abort the launch and the rescue folks would have a hard time getting to you. So that's usually what drives the weather situation, right? But what delayed us by a whole week was actually landing weather, splashdown weather. Not for us, not for a NASA or government crew, but for Axiom 1. They were the very first purely private mission to the International Space Station. So the mission was commanded by a former NASA astronaut, but the other 3 gentlemen on board were paying customers who had bought themselves a ticket to go to the space station. And they didn't have good weather for splashing down. And they had our parking spot up there, our docking port, so we couldn't launch if they didn't come back. And so we were stuck there for over a week waiting for them to come back. But that's also a significant change, right? When I became an astronaut in 2009, I would have never imagined something like that, right? So just to give you an idea of how things are evolving fast.
So I'm about to open up the questions. I could listen to these stories all day, but I just want to ask you, as you were coming back, what was like the one thing you were like, oh God, thank God I'm coming back to Earth because I get to
take a shower?
Take a shower. Fair enough. All right, I see already a question over here. Let's just let you get a mic, if that's okay. And if you could maybe just introduce yourself, we'd appreciate that, and where you're from.
Yeah, I'm Sylvia Kohlmann from Rostock, Germany, and thank you so much for the inspiring panel. I used to work for the GNSS Galileo for the German Aerospace Center and for Airbus as well, under Professor Werner, who later was then the director of the ESA. And my question is going to Mrs. Cristoforetti and Mr. Taylor, because I found your insights very inspiring. And maybe if you like to share, what kind of recommendation or clue would you give your younger 10-year-old? Because I like to learn a little bit more from your experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think that was for you, Smith.
Yeah, well, I happen to have an almost 10-year-old.
For your younger self.
Oh, my own younger self. Oh, my God. I'm so happy with my life overall that I wouldn't change anything, because you think you're improving something, but you never know what really, what really happens. So maybe I'll stick to my own 10-year-old and any other 10-year-olds. I mean, I think what's really important at that age is to let them try things out and see and understand where their passions and their talents are. Because astronauts specifically, they come from all walks of life, but they're usually fairly happy and fairly happy people, and they're really usually pretty good at whatever they were doing before. And I don't think you can do that unless you find some kind of passion or something that you're really passionate about. So, you know, 10 years old, I mean, I try to influence my daughter as little as possible, but give her all kinds of opportunities to just try out and see what she's going to be passionate about.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to the back over here with the white jacket, and then I'll go over here next.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very interesting panel. I'm Dragana Popovic-Renella from Senis in Switzerland. We supply precision magnetometers also to the space industry. And my question is, if we are moving towards a cooperative responsible space model, what do you think will be the main constraints, systemic constraints for small, medium suppliers? So will that be like qualifications, requirements, or simply procurement pathways? And how can public agencies support SMEs in moving faster or scaling into these global missions? Thank you.
Who wants to take a shot at that?
I've got one thought on the topic. I would say standards. So part of the reason the royal we meaning humanity, can't move quicker on some of these supply chain issues, whether it's in the US or Europe or elsewhere, is we don't necessarily have all the right standards that we can all agree on. And I think if we had a governing body, and I would welcome the WEF's participation on this, I've brought it up to the WEF in the past, we don't really have an overall governing body that can weigh in on some of these standards. And so we have European standards, we have an American standard. But I think the more standards we have, the more alignment we can have, the faster we can go. Costs would also be reduced pretty dramatically. And I think it would help out a lot of mid to small suppliers to plug into a larger ecosystem. So that would be one suggestion I would have.
Yeah. Perhaps just to complement, because the question was also about the role of the agencies, it's to basically support the companies to actually meet with these standards, if we can come to international standards. To give you a very concrete example, where we are building right now, with the support of the European Space Agency, a capsule that's going to dock to the International Space Station. And for that, we need to meet the American safety standards, because of course we shall never collide with the station. And we know very little about human safety in Europe, because we never built a vehicle that would fly humans, like for real. We had projects, but we never built a vehicle that actually came to flight. And the collaboration we are having with NASA and with the European Space Agency is for us extremely important, so that we can understand what is the intent of these standards and how we're going to meet them, so that ultimately we can fly. And if we cannot meet the safety standard, there is no chance that we're going to fly. So I think this is the role of the agencies, to be these translators, to support the industry understanding and building spacecraft that really meet the standards.
Great, thank you. Back there with the glasses on. Yeah, that's you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for a very stimulating conversation this morning. My name is Jennifer Rogers. I come from Ireland, and I work between arts and business communications. My question today is for Taylor. I found your proposition of microgravities and the possibilities for stem cell regeneration and printing human organs absolutely inspiring. And my question to you today is, how do we, as storytellers, as cultural creators, have to start thinking about managing these realities that are going forward? What can we do today to empower our people to work in these cultures of the future?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, and I do think about this a lot, because I think space is going to happen whether we want it to happen or not, and I think it could be an extremely positive influence on the future of humanity, but we have to shape it. And to your point, you know, Escape from Earth, kind of Billionaire Boys Club is one narrative. The other narrative is this power to benefit life here on Earth. And I think microgravity research is something that the world can really rally around. So I would encourage you, there's quite a few companies out there doing real research on the International Space Station today. We have a partnership actually with several universities, one of which is the University of Zurich. And there's a research consortium called VISTA, and it's Ohio State University, University of Zurich, and others. And the whole idea is to do the real work on research areas, whether it's biopharma or ag tech or other research areas, and take that research docket, if you will, and translate it to real missions, real payloads, real science in microgravity to benefit life here on Earth. So those stories are out there, and I would encourage you to, and if you want to follow up with me directly, I can point you in the right direction. But I think it's really, really, really important that we start talking about the promise of space. You know, a thought experiment that I'll just share with you that I like to use, because we have a bit of militarization in space as well, right? So to me, the future of humanity in space really will be determined by the answer to a question. And that question is, what will happen first? The first human born in space or the first combat fatality in space, right? And I think we in this room can help shape the answer to that question. I hope it's the former and not the latter. But to do that, we have to do the science, and we have to, and I just want to brag on Samantha for a moment. You asked the 10-year-old question, which is a brilliant question. My advice, if you want to be a professional astronaut, be collaborative, be an abundance thinker, because every astronaut I've met, whether they're Russian, Korean, European, male, female, fighter pilot, which Samantha is, or scientist or artist, they are some of the most collaborative, I would say collegial people you'll ever meet. Because if you are a chest pounder and a me-first person, you will not make it through the astronaut corps. And so when I talk about us projecting the best of humanity into space, I'm talking about people like Samantha in this notion that we as a species really have a duty to each other to make the world a better place. And I think that's really what space is all about.
That's amazing. Okay, who's next? Take this gentleman here.
Hi, Abdulwahab Al-Athim. I came from Saudi Arabia, mostly working in AI investment and as advisor. So my question actually to Ms. Taylor, that also touch some points that Samantha have mentioned, which is the moment that people speak about physical AI and they want to move into physical AI where robots can actually handle a complete ecosystem, the first application that came to my mind actually is space. Because it's so difficult to send a human. There is a many constraints, and Samantha knows that many of these. But then I realized that people want to go to the space. So there is a huge race of people going to space instead of building this physical AI and leveraging it to go to the space. So from a commercial point of view, to Taylor and also to the Samantha, what do you think about what's going to be in the future? Samantha touched a point is the new rocket. It's become more autonomy. But are we going to reach where there is a full autonomy in the space industry or not?
Yeah. So the notion is send humans or send robots. In some cases, you might be able to do both. Because imagine you're an avatar and you're manipulating a robot that's on the moon, for example. So that's one way to go. The holdback for doing, I would say, physical AI in space has been latency, right? Because you have the speed of light. Even at the moon, there's some time lag there. But with intelligence evolving as rapidly as it is, and you can actually have autonomy because the piece of hardware can actually make decisions on its own based upon input, I'm in the camp that says there's going to be much more autonomous physical AI doing a lot of the hard jobs on the moon. So for example, helium-3 is on the moon. Helium-3 is relevant for quantum computing. Helium-3 is relevant for fusion. You could send a bunch of humans up there to mine helium-3, or you could send a bunch of autonomous, intelligent, physical AI robots to do that kind of work as well, under human supervision as well. So don't think evil robots taking over the moon. But I think that's likely where things are going to go. And the technology, as you know, is evolving incredibly rapidly. But the part that people didn't anticipate, let's say 5 years ago, is how much intelligence you can embed on the physical AI. That's what's changed the game, I think, fundamentally.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I mean, this is really an open question, and it will be up to us collectively as humanity, as these intelligent robots evolve to understand, decide, shape what we want to hand over to them, as opposed to keep as our prerogative, and not only in space, but I suspect on Earth as well. I will share one anecdote, though, that actually two things I'd like to share. One is, when I came back from my first mission, one of the things we like to do as astronauts in space, as you might know, is free time. There's not a whole lot of things to do. You can go to the movies, you can go out for a walk. So one of the things we do a lot is like take pictures. We have this amazing view of the Earth, and we try to capture and share that. And so, in my first mission, just like on my second, I took probably thousands of pictures, and maybe hundreds of those were posted on social media for to share with the world. And I remember coming back from my first space flight and doing, what we call the post-flight tour in my home country in Italy, go out and, meet people and talk about my experience. And something I heard constantly from people were like, we miss your pictures so much. And this really struck me, because my answer was like, I mean, there's people on board now, they're taking just as good pictures as I did, and they're sharing them, so why are you missing pictures? I mean, there's so many pictures. And I was like, it's not the same. We wanted your pictures. So, because of course it was my home country, they had developed a personal relationship with me. And so for them, my pictures were special. And then somebody else's pictures might be special to somebody else. But in general, I think it's also not the same, a picture taken by an astronaut, maybe with a commentary, how that made you feel when you saw it, as opposed to all the gazillion pictures, better pictures, by the way, optically better pictures that satellites download all the time, right? You could look at the pictures of satellites, but very few people do that. While a lot of people are passionate about the pictures taken by humans. So is that going to remain relevant? I mean, it obviously was in 2016 after my first mission. I think it still is now. Is this still going to be relevant for new generations who are like native, AIs, citizen? I don't know. Maybe indeed it will become, for people in the future, 100 years from now, experiencing, I don't know, the moon and Mars through an avatar will be enough, or will be to them just as significant as it is for us to be there, as, having a human there. That I really cannot predict. To me, that is very much an open question. But I'd like to share something else which is somewhat related, but it came up in a panel yesterday, and I thought it was fascinating, which was this idea of expanding, human intelligence and human civilization, if you want, beyond the solar system. It's very, very unlikely that in the foreseeable future we're going to be able to send actual human beings, right, beyond the confines of our solar system. But maybe one way is to send a robotically embodied intelligence that represents our collective human intelligence and knowledge and culture, kind of like with the Voyager and the disk, right, but kind of like a more advanced instantiation of that. And so that might be a way of us, in some way, reaching out beyond the solar system.
Thank you for that. I actually think this exchange is a broader exchange around like what will humans do versus the physical AI in the future, and what is that special thing that people just want to get from humans. Well, we're out of time, which I can't believe. I hope as you leave here today, you think about our theme of the week here in Davos. This is about a spirit of dialogue. That's what we had today, a lot of different perspectives. But when we think about space, this is going to be what's necessary. We're going to need to do this together. We will go farther together. So I would like you all to give a big thank you to our panelists, please. And enjoy the rest of your time here. Thank you. Sorry, we've run out of time. So sorry.
All right. I just...